This is going to be the ultimate playoff preview, Dallas Mavericks side of the Mavericks Clippers playoff series. Round one.
The ultimate preview for a huge Dallas Mavericks win. Game one win. Mavericks are winning game one. You heard it here first.
Whoo! Freezing cold takes. Keep it down.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks Podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor at Mavs.com, the playoff preview prodigy, the One More Thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, Nick, I just want to ask you how you're feeling. We're one game into the play-in tournament. This exciting, this super joyful just tournament. The Pacers-Hornets game just ended. How are you feeling after this?
I'm feeling fine. It's going to be good. There's going to be a couple good games. There's one dud, and I'm glad it was that one because nobody was really interested in that game anyway.
No, nobody cared about that game. I'm just kidding. Washington and Boston's probably about to be a super fun game. We're recording this right at near tip-off of that game, so I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun.
Today's episode is brought to you by Locker Room. Download the app and join us this week on Thursday at some point to get in on the action. Locker Room, changing the way we talk sports. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into this preview. We want to do a full preview, like cover your kids' ears, like a big ass preview of like this entire series. So we're gonna go a little long today. We're going to break down key changes for the Mavericks and Clippers, key stats for the Mavericks and Clippers that we found, key matchups for both teams, and then key storylines that we've kind of already gone over. Some of this stuff we've gone over a little bit, but we want to just do all of it in one podcast. So for people that are listening for the first time, if you are, Isaac and I have been covering the team for 5 or 6 years. We've been doing this podcast for going into our 5th year soon.
Woo!
We're about to hit that in a couple weeks here. So we've been doing this for a long time. You may have been doing this, but we were born into it, basically, is what.
I actually just had somebody today find our pod for the first time and ask me about it, and they're like, man, and so they're asking how many people listen and all this stuff. I'm like, there's actually been a really cool community that's been built around this podcast, and Mavericks fans literally around the world and from all these different countries, and we just saw an example this past week, and it's been really cool to see you guys hop on board and support us and the Mavs.
It's been absolutely great. Thank you for joining the Raccoon Squad. That's everybody that listens to this podcast. That's a loyal listener to this podcast. You're in the Raccoon Squad. You're a card-carrying member. So, all right, let's get into this playoff series. So, we have to start a little bit with practice. The Mavericks practiced on Tuesday. They got one of their first full practices, a home practice, which was kind of a rare thing this season. And the big update was on Maxi Kleber. His status is still a little bit uncertain, a little bit unknown. Rick Carlisle said he did participate in practice, but it was a non-contact, technique-oriented practice. He has a sore right Achilles. And Carlisle said that tomorrow is going to be a big day to see how he's progressed. So today, Wednesday, if you're watching, listening to this, this is a big day for Maxi Kleber. So we could know his status for game one. He's expected to play. He's expected to be available, but if he's kind of hobbled, maybe they don't start him, right? Maybe they come off the bench and that decision for the starting lineup is made for him. For people that are maybe listening for the first time or Clippers fans, Maxi Kleber is incredibly important for this team. Last season, he guarded Kawhi Leonard in the series between the Mavs and Clippers. He actually did a pretty decent job on him. He is kind of the way that their defense sort of runs. He is so important for their defense. His decision-making, being in the right spots, he kind of calls things out. And also, he's been a 40% three-point shooter this season, so he's absolutely crucial for the spacing on this team as well. He's probably replaced by Tim Hardaway Jr., which doesn't really affect your spacing too much, but he is very crucial for this team, and so his status is massive for the Mavericks.
Yeah, I mean, in an underrated way, not for Mavericks fans if you've been watching him, but nationally, I think he's one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league as far as like that role player type of molded player that everybody wants on their team. Because like Nick said, he's been shooting 40% from 3 this season. He's 6'10", but he can guard, these bigger wings like Kawhi and stuff at times. Now, we say guard, like Kawhi can still get his buckets, but what we're talking about. Like Maxey can at least stay with him at times. So it's going to be really key for Dallas to have him. That outside of Dorian, who's going to be that next guy that can take a Kawhi, that can take a Paul George sometime. You're probably not going to put Maxey, probably lean more towards Josh on Paul George at time, but you need that flexibility. Even if they do start Dwight and go big with KP, you still need that flexibility with Maxey off the bench. So his availability will be honestly, before we hit record on the pod, we were talking about the practice, media availability today. I'm like, that was the only thing I wanted to hear today. I just want to hear Maxey, the update on Maxey. It's the only thing I cared about because I think it does impact this series.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. The other thing I thought was interesting, I actually went to Clippers media as well and went to it. I clicked a Zoom link is what I did. But in Clippers practice, they asked Ty Lue about pressure, and they asked if there was any pressure on this team. And he reacted in a way. No, he reacted in a way that was like kind of surprising to me. As soon as he heard the word pressure in the question, and whoever was asking the question, I don't know who it was, sounded pretty nervous, so it wasn't like a completely full. It was kind of a long-winded question. And so Ty Lue had a lot of time during that question. As soon as the word pressure was formed, he was like putting his head in his hands and like huffing and just really frustrated with the fact that people keep asking about pressure. Is there any pressure for the Clippers? And he was like, no. Of course, he gives the coach answer. No, there's no pressure, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to go out and play our own game. Somebody asked if there's pressure for Paul George, and he goes, no, there's no pressure. He's just got to go out there and play his game. And I was just like, man, how can he say that, right? Like, how could he possibly say there's no pressure? I guess because he just got hired, and so he's not going to get fired if they lose this. If they lose, but man, if they lose this first round series, I mean, there's probably going to be some changes, right? Like, I don't know if Steve Ballmer's just going to. There's
massive amount of pressure. I think if I was him, I would have leaned into it a little bit and not fully lied. I would have been like, yeah, there's pressure on everybody, right? It's the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we all have pressure. We want to perform. I'd really soak it in. But yeah, to totally dismiss it, like, if we ranked the teams with the most pressure in the first round, you're probably in the top 3. And because you have a lot of storylines with free agency looming for Kawhi, Paul
and
George.
Not 3, right? Like,
you're probably not 3.
It's probably Clippers Bucks like 1-2, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd put Nets up there a little bit, but
in round 1?
Well, as far as okay. Yeah, that's true. But
so
they got they got a lot of pressure on him. So
the two things I thought that were interesting about that is his dismissal of the pressure and then his just complete annoyance with the question, which I guess Rick Carlisle gets annoyed with questions all the time, so that's not really
I'm not about to sit here and complain about coaches getting annoyed by stuff. So.
But I found it kind of interesting, and Reggie Jackson also had a really good quote. Callie Kaplan tweeted it out, I think, about Luka and defending Luka. He said he's 6'8" and he's built like a brick wall. Which is not usually a term or a metaphor for Luka, right? Like, that's not usually how you describe him, but it's true, man. And guarding him is going to be. And also, as soon as they asked the question about Luka, you can see Reggie Jackson's eyes get pretty big, and you just know, man, it's coming. It's coming for you, Reggie Jackson.
That brick wall hit the game winner over him. So
we'll get into Reggie Jackson a little bit later. But first, let's talk about Locker Room. Locker Room is the place to talk about sports. It's fun to just get on there, talk to some people, especially if you're still stuck in your house, if you're quarantining or anything like that. You can just get on. You can talk about any kind of stuff on Locker Room. It's a perfect place to start or join an already going on conversation. You'll find fans just like you on Locker Room for watch parties, debates, post-game breakdowns, and of course, reacting to big news and rumors. You just download the app for free. Currently available on iOS devices. Create a profile, link your Twitter, join the NBA group, the NFL group, MLB, NHL. You can join any kind of group. Like there's an MFFL group that you can join, get the latest league updates, and follow me. I'm at Nick Van Exit, and you can get notified whenever we do Locked On Mavs Locker Rooms if you want to join us. We're going live on Thursday at some point during the day. We will be talking all about Clippers Mavs, and we'll see what we got going on for that. So see us there, Locker Room, changing the way we talk sports. All right, Isaac Harris. So this is what we're going to do for this playoff preview. I want to talk about some key changes. Josh Richardson for Seth Curry. What does it actually mean for the Mavericks in this series? Because Seth Curry played a lot last season. He ended up starting in that series. It was kind of a big change the Mavericks made late. Is that they started Curry and Tim Hardaway Jr. and they kind of went a little small, right? They didn't really play a center, and then they kind of brought one in every once in a while. But they started with Tim Hardaway and Curry, and I thought that was a big change there. What is the difference now? And while we're on it, is Josh Richardson going to start? Are we going to see him start the game? Because he wasn't recently, and he's kind of lost his spot a little bit there to Hardaway and then to Josh Green a little bit. He's kind of been all over the place.
Yeah, I wonder on the bigger scale of this, I wonder how many teams entering the playoffs that you do not know they're for sure starting five. Because I think...
So I've been doing a lot of these... if you go on Locked On NBA's YouTube, I've been doing a lot of these previews with some of our NBA hosts, and every single host has said, yeah, we're finally just getting healthy, and we're finally just getting our starting five back. Like Lakers said this, Clippers just said this. There's so many, like Mavs have said that, like a lot of these teams are all of a sudden getting healthy. Hawks just said this too. Today I did that one for the first time. I mean, Jazz, right? The Jazz are getting healthy now for the first time in a long time too, and it's a lot of these teams that have been dealing with injuries on and off. So I think it might be a little more. I think it might be more teams than you'd think.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I was asking a way of like, I don't know how many teams there are, because that's the spot Dallas is in right now, and it's not just one position, right? Like we're not looking at who's going to start at point for them, and it's one of two guys, and we're sitting here debating, or it's not just all right, we know Dwight or Willie starting. It's one of the other. We'll see which one comes Saturday. It's not that. That's another thing we didn't say right off the top of the bat. Game is set for Saturday. Game 1, Clippers, Mavs. That's something we've been operating with. We've mentioned that on previous pods, I think earlier this week, that we were operating with Saturday being that date. But now that is official. We don't know tip-off time.
We were operating under the knowledge of,
there you go.
Of that. We were operating under the assumption of the knowledge that
but for Dallas, it's a couple different spots that, we've seen this starting unit throughout the year kind of shift, in the whole storyline of Tim Hardaway Jr., of him starting earlier in the season, then him going to the bench and being this ultimate pro, ultimate vet, and then he came off the bench and all this stuff, and now he's back in the starting unit and he's been playing well starting. It's like, all right, well now what's going to happen? Is he going to keep on being in there for Josh? But then there's the Maxey thing and Dwight Powell thing and Dorian playing the 4. It's crazy when you think of, I think some teams might be trying to figure out one position, but I wonder how many teams are in Dallas' spot of like, they could roll out so many different combinations on Saturday and I would not be completely shocked, right? There's 8 players that we could see starting?
There's only 3 guaranteed starters, right? Luka, Porzingis, and Dorian, right? Like Dorian is the other guaranteed starter, and then the wild cards are, there's so many of them, right? There's Maxey with his injuries. Yep. There's Dwight and Willie with the matchup, basically matchup dependent. Every once in a while, Boban gets Boban will get a start. I don't count
Boban.
I don't think he's gonna get in the playoffs. Tim Hardaway has been coming off the bench a lot. Yeah. And then Josh Richardson is kind of the other guy. There's so many different ways that they could go with this.
I don't see Brunson starting, but at least it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if he did.
He closes games.
Yeah, he closes games. So going back to the Josh thing, we just don't know. Nobody knows. Like Josh could come out and start on Saturday and play 30 minutes and guard Paul George and match Paul George's minutes because they've studied and seen that Josh Richardson is, I'm joking on that, if that's where Rick Carlisle landed on that. And I'll be like, all right, I kind of get it because you want to throw another defender at him. Or Josh Richardson could come out on Saturday and play 12 minutes, and Tim Hardaway plays 33 minutes. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked that way. Nope. The wide range for the expectation and role of Josh Richardson in this series, it is so drastic. And so I honestly don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah, that one's going to be really interesting. So that's kind of the big change there for the Mavericks is that trade that happened over the offseason. Another big change is Kristaps Porzingis. One of the Clippers, Locked On Clippers hosts asked me today, is KP fully healthy? And I was like, well, define fully healthy. It's just really hard to tell at some points. He's missed a couple of games recently with an ankle issue. Obviously, he was out for the beginning of the season with the torn meniscus surgery that he had over the offseason. He's missed a couple of games here and there. Obviously, they hold him out in second night of back-to-backs. He has played some back-to-backs, so we won't say that he's been held out of all of them. But he's now just getting back in the lineup a couple of games before the playoffs after missing some more time with an ankle. So he is going to play. He is healthy, right? Like I wouldn't say fully healthy. If I put a percentage on it, maybe he's 75% healthy, but we're not sure exactly what game shape he is. He looked pretty good in the first game he came back, and he's looked decent on offense in the games that he's been back. But KP playing is a big change for this Mavericks team because, and we'll have to remind everybody, last season, Game 1 of this series, Mavs-Clippers, KP was ejected after 20 minutes for defending Luka, getting a technical, and Marcus Morris totally baited him into it. And then he was out for the last 3 games because of the meniscus. They tore in that series. And so he's going to make a big difference. I have a couple of stats that do not necessarily back that up, but I think he is big for the Mavericks ceiling. I think he's really big for the Mavericks ceiling. If he can go and he can be the scorer when Luka is on the bench, that's the biggest part. We've been tracking numbers, and I'll bring these numbers up a little bit later, all year about what the Mavericks look like when KP is on the floor and Luka is off the court. Because when the Mavericks are winning those minutes, if they have a positive net rating in those minutes, then it's almost unstoppable, right? Like if the offense is humming like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've always referred to KP as the ceiling raiser for this team, because if KP is the for sure second star, if he is averaging the 28, he's matching Luka as far as points per game, and he's carrying the load when Luka's off the floor. Like, that's what makes this team. Like, if you could sit here and guarantee me right now, KP can do that and will be fully healthy, and all of it, like, let's go. Let's go against anybody in the series and say we have a shot. And that's the thing with KP. It's just you can't really predict it. We don't know. We don't know what can pop up. We don't. Just over the past few months, we've seen a wrist issue. For a couple of games, we saw knee soreness. He tweaked his ankle. And I'm not saying it's. There've been some freak accidents from him on the court. These are contact things that he's been referring to. But I will say this on a positive note. With all the stuff over the past few months, I think this is the best way for us to enter. If he's not going to be like fully 100% healthy, at least we saw a couple games before the playoffs. At least we seen him in action. He looked good when he was playing. He had that play on the wing to where he pump fake, sidestep, bucket in this last game. It's like, all right, you're feeling it. You have the confidence right now. I think those last 3 games did help him get back in the groove. I think he'll still be a little bit rusty, especially in game 1, but I think those last 3 games definitely helped.
Yeah, the other one I had here for key changes for the Mavericks is Tim Hardaway Jr. has been starting recently. We talked all about the starting lineup and the changes there, but that's another big change. On the Clippers side, changes for them. Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell are gone. They're out of there, right? Like they got traded. They're out. Harrell signed with the Lakers in the offseason. You ready for this stat? Last season in the playoffs, so both the Mavericks series and Nuggets series combined, when Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell shared the court, what do you think their net rating was? The difference between the points scored per 100 possessions and points allowed per 100 possessions. Just in the playoffs when those two were both on the court.
Gosh, I feel like they weren't very good in the playoffs.
No.
I could be wrong. Is it the opposite?
Negative 21.1.
Oh, so I was right.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, when Kawhi and Paul George were on the court together, they were a positive 0.5. So it's not like they were destroying people when, those guys were off the court, and then when they were on the court, they were getting killed. But that's a huge difference. That's a huge 21 points per 100 possessions is a massive difference. Their defensive rating when those two shared the court during the playoffs was 127.8. An awful, awful defensive rating. So with those two guys out, addition by subtraction, right? Like we could do the Michael Scott. What does that mean? But it means, I think it's a positive for them. I mean, their offense was something, but their defense just held them down so far. And so, who did they replace them with? Luke Kennard and DeMarcus Cousins, right?
Well, kind of like Serge Ibaka.
No, it's Serge Ibaka.
Rondo, Luke Kennard.
Right. No, it's messy.
No, they have more depth this season than last season. I think they do.
I don't know if they do.
Really?
Last season was like we were talking about them as like one of the deepest teams. Like Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell were both top and 6th man of the year. We were talking about them as, not all-stars, but like the 4th level of all-star. You know what I mean?
I think Ibaka and Rondo will impact the series. Like they'll impact the playoffs more than Harrell and Lou did.
I agree with that. Yeah. But if you're talking about just the depth of a team, they have. Yeah, it's really interesting. Their bench is like their playoff depth is probably a little bit more defined, but most of the other guys are the same. So those two guys are massive, a big change for them. Reggie Jackson has been inserted as the starter. He's in the starting 5 as of January. He's averaging 27.3 minutes a game when he starts, and he's shooting 43% from 3. He's having a really good season. The Clippers fans have been happy with what he's done in the starting lineup, and that's a good thing for the Mavericks. If the Mavericks can't hunt Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell on mismatches, then they're going to do it with Reggie Jackson. Like, he's going to be the guy you're going to see over and over again. It's probably going to drive Mavs fans and Clippers fans nuts. Them just keep switching. Tim Hardaway Jr., how many screens is he going to set for Luka in this series? I mean, like, insane amount. They do that all the time to try and get Luka on these smaller guards. And Luka won, a game for the Mavericks last year on the game winner when it was on Reggie Jackson. So that's going to be a big thing for the Mavericks, and Clippers have to find some way to figure that out. Patrick Beverley, you'd be like, oh, well, why don't they just play Patrick Beverley instead? He's not been healthy. He's only played 37 games this year. They're not 100% sure about his health, and
he did play the other night, so it looks like at least he'll be playing in the series, though.
He's going to probably play in the series. They're not sure 100% if he can hold up the rest of this. So, but Reggie Jackson, that's another big change for the Clippers.
Yeah. I mean, they have 3 point guards now. It's Reggie Jackson and Pat Beverley. And, I mean, we hate talking about him, but there is something with playoff Rondo. No matter how much Rondo hates that nickname or whatever, it is when it's playoff time, Rondo's shown that he does take it up a notch. And
he was as somebody, and you guys know this, like, I grew up a Lakers fan, so I watched like a lot of Lakers.
Really?
He was night and day different in the playoffs than in the regular season. Like, regular season last season, he was so bad. Like, so bad. Every time that he would go out there, the Lakers would lose minutes. And in the playoffs, he was just this completely different player. So there is something about that, and it may come out in this series, it may not. It's definitely going to be a big storyline, but that was my other key change for the Clippers.
Yeah, if he goes to that same level again, and they have a potential of a closing lineup of like Rondo, PG, Kawhi, Morris, and Ibaka, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough to match up against. Can I throw something at you from Dallas, a key change?
Yeah, coming up, Dallas has a couple of key changes. There's a couple more for the Clippers, and then we got key stats. We have a whole bunch of stuff, key matchups. You don't want to miss it. This is the ultimate playoff preview for the Mavericks-Clippers series. We'll get into that coming up. But before we do, Isaac Harris, let me tell you about betonline.ag. BetOnline.ag is the perfect place to put down some money on sports. We talked a couple days ago about the lines. They're already up for this series. They are kind of interesting. Let's check to see if they've changed in the last couple of days here. The Dallas Mavericks and the Clippers. Minus 400 money line for the Clippers in the series. That's the same as yesterday. They're holding true to that. That's the highest, or that's the lowest odds. Basically the Clippers are the biggest favorite in the series of the lines of the series that BetOnline is taking odds on. So that's pretty interesting. If you just go on game one, the Mavericks are a 5-point underdog, which is a half a point different than it was yesterday. So the Clippers are a little bit more of a favorite in game one. That one is a fascinating one if you want to go look at that. If you want to put down some money on either of these games, if you're feeling good, like Isaac Harris was in the intro, he felt good about game one for Dallas.
I got it. Mavs got game one. I'm ready.
Go ahead, put some money down on it. You got it right here. BetOnline.ag, Locked On is the promo code to get a 50% welcome bonus to the first deposit. So deposit $100, you get $50 you can put down on this game to get yourself some extra money. You can hedge your bets. You can do whatever you want with it, I guess. If you want to do 50 on both, see if you can win either one. You do whatever you want. Don't take my gambling advice. I always pick the wrong one. So there you go. BetOnline.ag. Use the promo code Locked On to get a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Also, let's talk about Built Bar. It's a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. I had one today. The coconut brownie chunk is absolutely delicious. Now, they have a new birthday cake bar. Did you have the birthday cake one?
I did. It's good.
It is good.
It has a little sprinkles on top.
I am not a super birthday cake person, and it was decent. I think I could eat a half one. I don't think I could eat a full one. That's so rich. And so if you love birthday cake, if this is the stuff that you kind of love, you are going to absolutely love this bar. Like Isaac said, it has sprinkles. This is a piece of birthday cake, but it actually does kind of look like the bar kind of looks like that, right?
Yeah.
In this picture that I'm showing on YouTube. Go get it. And the best thing about it is it does taste like birthday cake. There are sprinkles on it, 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, only 6 grams of sugar. How many grams of sugar do you think is a normal birthday cake piece?
400.
Like 85? Yeah, right. Like a ton. This you can get, and you can hit that craving. You can also tide your hunger over a little bit between meals. Built Bar, use the promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your next order. Not your first, your next with Built Bar. Promo code LOCKED15. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into some of these key changes. We're going crazy on these key changes. This is taking us a little while to get through these, but what's another key change for the Mavericks?
Well, I think the biggest change for them outside of, they swapped out Seth for Josh. We know that. The Brunson addition, he wasn't in the playoffs last year. in a way, like if Brunson gives you what Trey Burke did last year, you're happy, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, so I'm kind of like washing them out some. I think the biggest difference for Dallas this season or in this playoffs is having a rim roller. Like having Dwight Powell in this series, I think will make a difference. When you look at last year, they didn't have Willie, they didn't have Dwight Powell. Their big man rotation was 3 guys. Porzingis, Maxey, and Boban. That's it. Like, that was their big man rotation. And when KP went out, it was, hey, we have to go small. We have to throw Maxey out there. We have to throw Boban out there. They didn't have the rim roller. They didn't have either one of those guys.
And the Mavericks do not play small. They have not played small almost at all. They play with it like Dorian at the 4 sometimes, but they don't play completely small, like at all, pretty much. They always play with at least one big man out there in Porzingis, Willie, Dwight. Dwight is a little undersized, but at least one at all times. Like, that's a huge thing for the Mavericks.
But what Dwight brings to that offense of having that rim roller in there, I think we've seen it come to light a little bit more over these past few weeks of how it does create that spacing and how they might put KP in the corner some, but it allows them just another way of running the offense that I expect the Clippers, even though they have Paul George and Kawhi, I expect them to bring a double team at Luka at times, and we need that guy to be able to roll to the basket. And Dwight's one of the best guys in that. When you look at Dwight's numbers this season, minimum of 80 possessions as the pick and roll man. Dwight Powell is 3rd in the league. He scores, you ready? 69% of the time. Yes, that's how good Dwight Powell is, in scoring as a pick and roll man, scoring at 1.3 points per possession. He's literally one of the best rollers in the league. Rick Carlisle, I'm writing a story on Dwight Powell. Rick Carlisle called Dwight Powell one of the best rim rollers that he's ever seen in his time in the NBA. and on top of that, Luka Doncic is literally in the 91st percentile according to Synergy as the pick and roll ball handler. So you combine those two combinations as one of the best rim rollers in the league with one of the best pick and roll guys in the league. That will help your offense, and they didn't have that last season. So I know we like to take our shots at Dwight Powell at times, but I think that literally will make a big difference, and that's the biggest change for Dallas going into this series.
Which one is more true? That Dwight Powell is one of the best rim rollers in the NBA, that Rick Carlisle said, or that Justin Jackson has the best floater in NBA history?
Justin Jackson.
Which one is more true? Carlisle said both.
I think the Dwight Powell one's actually legit. He does have
I'm
that's his thing. Justin Jackson.
We've seen these games. Like, Luka's been doubled a lot, right? Like
that Lakers game was a prime game of that.
And the Clippers started doing that last year. A couple games late, they started doubling him. But the Mavericks didn't have a role guy to try and fill that space from where the double came from. And Dwight does it so well. Like, there have been games where they play Dwight and Willie with Luka at different times, and they're doubling him. Like, I can't remember which specific game it was. It was so clear how much better Dwight is at getting to the open space during a double team in a trap than Willie or somebody else is, or even like Porzingis or Maxey, or any of the other bigs. He's just so good at finding the exact space, the exact window, getting there, and then he can make a move off of one dribble. He can score in that way. Defensively is where it's going to be a problem for Dwight in this series, I think. But if the Clippers go small, or if they just play Ibaka, like, he can stand that. He's not going to guard Zoo, though. That's going to be a huge problem for him, and if they ever match up in that way. But yeah, Dwight Powell in his role, when his role is the correct role, when they changed his role a couple years ago, he became so effective. But yeah, that's a big change for the Mavericks.
In a way, if it hurts on defense, why don't you play that reverse psychology? It's like, oh, you got the mismatch. Why don't you dump it down to Zubac?
Yeah,
like,
ISO
every
him.
Time. Do it.
ISO.
Post him. Let's do this. This is what people do to the Mavericks with KP and all that. But
and then Dorian comes over for the double. So
hey, if it takes the ball out of Paul George and Kawhi's hands, let's do it.
And anything to get the ball out of the hands of three-point shooters, I think, for this series for the Mavericks, because that is going to – a couple key stats. I mean, we have so much more to get to on this. We just did an entire podcast, basically, on key changes. We're going to keep going. This is the ultimate playoff preview.